Hi, y'all. I know the lighting is kind of crazy right now because, well, it is like almost 6:30 where I am, and the sun is out because daylight saving, right? And I have the blinds open, so yeah. I mean, not open, but just open enough, and it looks like this. Either way, that's beside the point. Happy St. Patty's Day, y'all! For those who celebrate, um, you know, it's not that I like celebrate, um, but I think for me, like what got me into St. Patty's Day was when I was working in New York and I was like walking around. I was out of work and I was in the area. I think it had to be like springtime and it was lighter out after I got off because I think I got out of work around like 4 or 5 o'clock or something like that. Sometime in the evening. And so it was lighter later. So I was like, you know what? I feel like walking around and it would think it was like a Friday. So I didn't have work the next day. So I wasn't in a rush to be home. And I was having an awful experience working there. And it pisses me off because it really could have been like it could have been a better experience. And it frustrates me because it was an institution that I really wanted to be a part of. Um, you know, Either way, I didn't really care to get into that, but I was having a rough time while I was out there, and I stumbled upon the St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. I think it's on Fifth Ave or not far from it. Um, it's not far from the Rockefeller Center, and it was open to the public, and I think they were doing, like, the Stations of the Cross, and mind you, it wasn't, like, Easter or anything like that, but that just happened to be the service that was going on. And I was walking through the church and it's such a beautiful cathedral. Like the architecture, the stained glass, the statues, and they have like little sections throughout the church that are dedicated to different saints or people who are canonized. And you can leave like flowers and prayers and stuff like that. And and I was having like a rough time in my life at this point. And this was during a time where like I was trying to show up for my mom. My dad was still in the picture, but he wasn't really like understanding what I was going through, or at least it didn't appear that way to me. And, you know, I just needed a moment to like realign with faith and with God and to know that there's some type of like entity or energy that cares for me in this world. And yeah, so I went to the church and I stayed and I sat through the service as they did the Stations of the Cross. And mind you, it's like a tourist area too, which is interesting because I'm from Jersey, and you know our churches aren't as popping as that. So there's people who can walk around and take pictures and stuff like that as the service is going on. And then there's people that are sitting there in the pews, attending the service. So I was there. I started taking pictures, but then I sat and watched the service. And then after I think towards the end of the service, I like walked through and took pictures and everything. And I remember I was on the phone with my dad and I was just telling him how beautiful this cathedral was. And I think after that point I like picked up some juniors for him and I, because I know you like not usually, but there's been times where I'll be in New York with him and we'll get like cheesecake from juniors. So I picked up some cheesecake for him and I picked up cheesecake for myself. And I took the train home. But you know, when I was at that church, I was intrigued to like learn more about St. Patty's. And the thing is, like, I went to a Catholic school, right? So, like, I'm familiar with different like saints and prayers and stuff like that. So I'm grateful to have that foundation. No pun intended. That happens to be the name of one of my schools, even though that one's not a Christian school. But I'm grateful to have went to schools with Christian principles and lessons where there was like church involved, because even though I couldn't appreciate it at the time, because I'm just a kid, I'm just like, one, I ain't even like school to begin with, right? I was very much like, I was against the system, against like authority. And it's not like I was a bad student, I just wasn't like attentive. Like, I could pay attention in class and follow what was going on, I just never cared to do homework. And but I wasn't dumb. I was like, it just, I didn't care for the structure of school. But in hindsight, today, as someone that's pushing 30, I'm grateful for that being instilled in me, because if I didn't have that, I don't know if, I mean, I feel like, I don't know. My journey is an interesting one. There's some things that are just written in stone, and then some things I feel like just happen because of God. But that foundation gave me the faith to keep going through some of the hardest experiences in my life, and times where I feel like I have nobody. And oh, I wasn't expecting to get emotional. Um, but just to be real, at times where I felt like I had nobody, and sometimes I still feel that way. I know my faith in God is the thing that keeps me grounded and anchored, and it keeps me going. And yeah, so I say all this to say it made me in I was intrigued to learn more about Saint Patty or Saint Patrick. Aside from the fact that like a lot of Irish people celebrate it, and the funny thing is Saint Patrick isn't Irish. I think he's from the UK, but he moved to Ireland and did a lot of work in the area. And but I was intrigued because I'm like, what is the big deal about St. Patrick aside from like there's a church named after him, there's a holiday. I never really paid attention to that holiday. Maybe in school, like if we had like drawings to do, like coloring, like a four-leaf clover type of thing, maybe. But um and I mean, I'm sure we did stuff in my school. Like I feel like there was days where we probably celebrated St. Patty's and like people had like, all the green on and whatnot, and like shamrock snacks or whatever. But it wasn't really a holiday that stuck with me. But for whatever reason in recent years, I paid more attention to it. And then me being a John Mayer fan, you know, I'm sure it's not a surprise that I would mention this, but I mean, obviously, it's St. Patrick's Day, and I like John Mayer, like, duh. Um, but he has a song called St. Patrick's Day, and on his album Room for Squares, which happens to be a favorite album of mine, one of them. And the cool thing about that song is that it was one of those songs where like you ever listen to an album and then there's like a song that you skip that you don't really pay attention to, but later on in life you find out that the song you were skipping is actually kind of fire. That was that song for me. And it wasn't until like maybe a few years ago, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, where I was like looking at apartments in Philly and I had that CD in the car with me, and I just like stumbled upon that song, and I was like, "This song is actually a vibe," because I usually listen to like the first half of that album, and the last few songs I just it's like, it's all right, But I I listened to that song and I was like, "This could have been a single. This is one of those songs. This is one of those like you're in a rom com." Type of vibe. Like it very much could have been in a movie. I'm sure it might be in a movie and I just don't know it. My movie, the Nerisse story. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I was like, oh, this is such a pretty song. But anyway, yeah, and so um for like the last few years, I was like intrigued to like try to watch a service for St. Patrick's Day. And I'm not gonna get too much into it because we already know what it is when it comes to things in my life, I feel. And I'm sure there's things you're already expecting me to say in regards to that. But I'll just say that, like, sometimes it's frustrating. It's frustrating when you really try to like be in alignment with faith and lean on churches or establishments of faith to for support or to help build you up or inspiration because that's what it's supposed to be for. Like not just like, okay, we all believe in the same thing, but I like to believe, well, depending on the type of church, I feel like some churches is like, all right, this is just the ritual, the routines. We light the incense, we read the thing, we eat the communion and keep it pushing. But there are some churches, mostly like black churches, depending on what kind, like maybe like Baptists or even Methodist, I think as well, where there's services and they really like, they go in on the sermon. And I love a good sermon. Um, but I don't know. I just feel like I know humans aren't perfect and there's always going to be discrepancies and issues within establishments where there's a scandal with the pastor and there's always that reference of like, in like Roman Catholic or Catholic churches and, with incidents with children and stuff like that. Like there's always that thing. People always bring that up, right? But that shouldn't be like that shouldn't be a norm. Like I feel like churches and granted people's other experiences could be different, but I feel like from my personal experience, churches aren't safe spaces like it should be. And I saw a post like maybe like a week ago or something like that recently, where it's like, they were talking about Atlanta, but I resonated with that post. Whereas like you have certain areas where there's churches everywhere, but there's no community. There's no sense of community. And I feel that way because on my block, like in my like neighborhood, there's hella churches over here. Lord. I mean, that's probably facts. But I don't mean to cuss when I'm talking about God and church, but I just keep it real. Look, Lord forgive me, but there's literally a church on my block. There's a church around the corner. There's a church. There's another building that I think was a church at one point or whatever. And it's not like I've never went to those churches for service, but I don't know. Like there's several churches around me now that I think about it. And even if it's not like around the corner, it's like a few blocks away or whatever. And and I'm like, that's so true. Like there's so many churches, but like why what is the lack of community? And not only that, but I just feel like there's churches that just like fold on uh, like morality. I don't know. Anyway, I mean, I could go into the whole like, oh, churches, I mean, I kind of had this rant to myself earlier today, like, have you no faith? Like even 'Cause I see that there's people in churches that I feel like lean into the dark side of things and, maybe out of fear or maybe out of just like going along to get along. And I'm just like, where is the courage? Where is the faith in God to say, this is wrong? The God that we serve does not co-sign or, you know, side with these things. So we're not going to participate. Like where is that? I mean, maybe there's some out there. I just haven't seen it yet. But, because it's one thing to be like, all right, you know what? Actually, that's not true. Shout out to Bishop Buddy, because that service that um Donnie did not appreciate. She said some valuable things that was really important. But that's a word. But beside that, my own experience is just seeing certain services where I'm like, there's just little nuanced things that goes on throughout the service that I'm like, okay, even like, okay, I'm trying to say this without it being so specific. Okay, for example, say if you have somebody from a different denomination attend a church, right? Like you have somebody that's Baptist attending a Catholic service. And say for whatever reason, even though we all believe in God and we all believe in Christ, for whatever reason, the Catholics don't really take to the Baptist person. I feel like we're in a day and age where I've seen a lot of people, like Catholics, attacking the Baptists rather than just being copacetic and being in a space where it's like, all right, we don't believe completely the same things, but I'm not going to attack you for it. We're just going to go on with our service. But you should, it doesn't even have to be like a let's go above and beyond to make you feel welcome thing. Like, just go on with the service. Like, the service doesn't have to be the extra, you know? Like, it could just do the service. Like, it doesn't have to be like, let's go above and beyond to make this person feel welcome, or let's do all these things to subliminally like shade this person and not make them feel welcome. And mind you, this doesn't even have to be a conversation within denominations. There's people who are like, maybe they're like in an AME church or something like that, and they are like a converted member of the church, and they still get discriminated against in their own church. Like that's not new, you know? And I don't like that. I don't like that. And not just from my own experience, but just for people in general. Cuz I mean, I would like to think that, like I said, we all believe in God, hopefully. We all believe in Jesus. And maybe the nuances of the Bible or the particular ritual that happens in the service, because they are rituals. And yeah, it does stem from paganism. That's not new. We know what that is. Like, I'm not the first person to say that. And I don't have necessarily have a problem with that because I'm spiritual as well. And you know, and that might be seen as something that people don't agree with, like mixing spirituality with Christianity. But and that's okay. People are entitled to that perspective and that opinion. But my thing is like, don't treat me bad because of that. If you know that I'm the fact that I'm even trying to participate and be in alignment with faith and with God, and to be a part of community in a way where we can all at least try to pray together, and we can all uplift God and be in praise of our Savior, you know? Yeah, that's how I feel about that. Um, and I mean, there's a lot of discrepancy within like Christianity that we can get into. And I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritties and the details of it all. Um, because I feel like there's a live stream somewhere in the archives where I've explained this. But I will make one particular. Nah, I'm not going to make that reference. But I will just plainly say, one of the issues that I feel like has been something historically within Christianity is racism. Like, but that's a loaded thing in itself. Like we can go into like white churches and black people not being able to go into white churches, and you know and then also during the times of slavery where we're getting abbreviated versions of the Bible that keep us complacent with slavery, even though we got stories where God is telling Moses to go send him to free his people. But that's a whole thing in itself. Um anyway, that was just something that I figured I'd discuss. I mean, and it's not surprising, right? I mean, obviously, it's like St. Patty's Day. John Mayer has a song called St. Patrick's Day, so she's probably going to mention John Mayer if she goes live stream on St. Patrick's Day. you know, but whatever. Anyway, um, but yeah, I mean, I briefly wanted to talk about that. But something else that I wanted to talk about was um just like I don't know, just certain things that just trying to like things that I've been feeling and how to navigate like the next best thing to do. Um so I was thinking about putting together a story where this girl discovers that she's a part of a conspiracy and she's just living her regular life, but she doesn't know that she was born into a occultist secret society thing, type of entity, and her energy and her spirit is being used by the government and people in positions of power to manifest their desires or whatever, or to help them get in position of power. And upon learning these things, she realizes that a lot of the situations and circumstances around her life is false and orchestrated and constructed to be that. And, she has like traumatic moments in her childhood that are manufactured and used to influence society to attack her and justify the abuse that she's been going through. And and upon realizing and investigating the things around her life, she discovers that, her life has been referenced in film, art, music, books for decades. And, in this quest to no bars, in this quest to discover the truth of her life, she's also seeking freedom. And in this fight for freedom, forgive me, yeah, um, I mean, I didn't finish the story yet, so, this isn't really a spoiler, but food for thought. But on this quest of her seeking the truth about her life and the origins to everything that she's been experiencing and the severity of it, as well as her fighting for her freedom, it's like a spiritual aspect to it too. There's like magic and spells involved, binding spells, um, the mark of the beast, and psychological warfare, where there's buttons and tactics that people can use to manipulate and control her and latch on to her energy based on her habits and her routines. So if she wears particular clothes, if you jump on the frequency of what she wears and you pull or manifest or summon her energy. And, technology is advanced to a certain point where, um, her devices are hacked and monitored. And there's handlers that, of course, try to influence what she does, what she wears, where she eats, where she goes. If she does go, she doesn't go, type of thing. And they harvest magic and energy from her blood, from her period. And technology is advanced to a point where they put implants in her eyes to see what she sees. So, and there's like hidden cameras all over. And as if the hidden cameras aren't enough, but the implants in her eyes, you know, how is there any sliver of privacy that she has? Um, you know, and the people monitoring her sees what she sees. So if she's looking at her bank account, if she's logging into her devices, typing in passwords, just writing thoughts, or expressing herself, or just seeing anything, or using the bathroom, people sees what she sees. And she's completely isolated from any genuine support system. But she does get positive messages from time to time and coded messages of help. And don't mind me, y'all. I was just thinking about how crazy that all would be if that were real life for one person to deal with. And she's trying to find freedom some way, somehow, despite the insane amount of invasion of any bit of privacy that she would have had. And she's thinking about putting together a store where she can raise money for herself because obviously she can't work a regular job. It's not like she's above it or like she's not like she wouldn't want to, but for safety reasons, even upon like revealing the truth and revealing the origins of a lot of the situations and the circumstances that she's in are manufactured that way. It's intentional for her to be in conflict with people to justify the abuse and the invasion of privacy and people, regular everyday people, just pressing buttons and saying, oh, can we fuck with her this way? Is it going to work? Let's watch. um so she can't work a regular job, but she needs to build some type of income for herself to survive like anybody the fuck else. And she's thinking about putting a store together, but there's like rumblings or hidden suggestions of like getting to a safer place first before doing so. But if so much of what she does and what devices that she has is already so heavily surveillanced, does it really matter? You know? Because it's like, all right, for customer privacy, it's a concern with the hacked devices and it being publicly displayed and all these things. But if, you know, even while using devices that aren't hacked or whatever, if she's hacked and you can see through her eyes, wouldn't that be a discrepancy? I mean, for one, that's like, I feel like some HIPAA law is violated at for that to even have happened, right? Still figuring that out in the storyline. But I mean, if what she can see is being seen, would it that's still invading the privacy of anyone that would be shopping the store. So she's at a point where she doesn't care. But it's not that she doesn't care about the privacy of her clients. She's stating that regardless, the situation is fucked. So she takes a chance and puts herself out there anyway. And even though, the whole idea is like, oh, let's create secrecy and like, like a faceless brand. But would it really matter? Because she has to process the orders. So customers that sympathize and want to support um ends up making orders. She launches the website and they make orders, but they make orders with anonymous names and PO boxes, or they take the risk of potentially knowing that their information might be readily available just because they're courageous enough to support this girl because they know the situation that she's in is extremely difficult and unimaginable. but apparently not, because I imagined this. Um, and she understands it's a risk, but they do too. And they're willing to take that risk to support this girl in her fight for freedom and truth. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it, with the story, of course. Um, and we'll see where it goes from there. Oh yeah, and by the way, she's trying to learn like coding and hacking, even though she really does not. That's not her main skill set. But throughout this whole journey, she's like picked up so many handy, really fucking dope skills. Like she's naturally a musician and she makes art, but um she's had to learn like craftsmanship skills, like to fix things. She is a pretty good cook, good at making like soul food and dinners and desserts and stuff like that, and freestyling meals and just making a way out of no way. Um, and really good at just like fixing things around, and not only that, but like putting like spiritual potions together, like to spiritually like cleanse and protect herself and all these things. Like she's evolved and grown through like some of the toughest things because in circumstances where she didn't have the knowledge and was seeking the knowledge from people who were skilled and knowledgeable, she was either getting like lied to or fucked over or whatever. So she just took it upon herself to say, all right, I'm just going to figure this out myself. And, started working like automobiles and learning like the ins and outs of a vehicle and learning about computers because, her persistence is unwavering and she doesn't quit until she wins. And there's times where she deters from the task because other things come up, or the goal gets pushed back, or the handlers get in the way and try to stifle her plans and, whatever. But somehow, some way, she figures out what she needs to figure out and learns what she needs to evolve. And slowly but surely, people have been considering her perspective and the things that she says and the things that she's been sharing upon her findings of what all is going on in her life and this whole you know secret um energetic spiritual slavery, because that's what it is. um and people are recognizing that a lot of the folks that was looked up to and admired um in positions of power, from politicians to, you know, business folks, celebrities. The Wizard of Oz facade is falling, and we're seeing behind the spells of what's really going on. And those people aren't happy about that. It was expected. It was expected that it would get to this point. Or maybe not. Maybe they thought they was going to get her up out of here before then, but they didn't. She's still here, whipping ass, might I add. And yeah, that's the story so far. Yeah. But that's all I wanted to share. Um, Hope you were entertained. Yeah. So spring is among us. I'm pretty excited about that. Spring is always a dope season. I mean, even though I'm a winter baby, because I'm an Aquarius, I can always appreciate spring because, that's when things blossom and that's when there's like a rebirth type of a situation where a lot of the things that were like stagnant in winter starts to blossom, like the leaves start to bloom on the trees, where it's like flowers first and then it's like the leaves and everything. Um, and it gets warmer outside, the daylight is out for longer, and it's like Earth or different parts of Earth has like a coming of age, but through nature. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful time. And some would say like that's should be the actual new year rather than having new year in the middle of winter because that's when there's a new rebirth and things come to a new cycle. There's a new shift, a new season. And I did a live stream a while ago, talking about the seasons changing and that being the equinoxes, the vernal equinox, which is spring, and the autumnal equinox, which is fall. And that's usually when the seasons are changing. And, spring is when it gets warmer, fall is when it gets colder after summer. And, at those two particular seasons, um, I feel like that's when Earth looks the most beautiful. Like the flowers are blooming and blossoming in the spring and everything is coming back to life. And then even though things are getting colder in the fall or autumn, that's when we see like the different leaves changing colors. So usually it's like green at that point from summer, but then it changes to like the reds and the orange and the yellows and pumpkin spice is everywhere. Um but it's such a vibe when the seasons change. And I feel like me just being like a fashion girly, fashion is always a vibe during fall to me because that's when you could layer, that's when you could put the peak coat on, rock a hat type of thing. Um, and boots are a vibe. But to bring it back to nature, I think those are like some of the dopest times um in the world, in the seasons and when they change. And yeah, so I look forward to experiencing the seasons changing with you all. And hopefully with it getting warmer out, um, I look forward to being outside more often to enjoy the seasons changing. I've been letting Angie, well, I mean, I've already been doing that once it started getting warmer. Or even when like during the winter when it's not too cold, I'll let Angie out on the back porch. But yeah, me and Angie will chill outside and enjoy the warm weather and the scenery. And yeah, I look forward to that. With that said, thanks for participating in this live stream. Um, I'm going to conclude with a quick prayer, and I will see you all later. We're just going to keep it to Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me on a path of righteousness for his name's sake. And although I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. God prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies and anoints my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So it is, so will be. Much gratitude for what's already been. Amen. Amen. Ashe. Thank you all for being a part of this live stream. I hope you enjoyed. Much love to y'all. Support the music. Check out the links in the bio and the description. Music is on SoundCloud. And I will see y'all later.